So we are looking at Daniel chapter 2. We're barely started in the chapter. This is actually, let me say, as we're getting ready to, I've been saying this the last couple weeks since we started. Those who come to this, and I've been saying it, but I have a new way to say it. Those who study with us for this year, the book of Daniel, I firmly believe are going to find that this will be the year that they will learn the Bible better than any other year that they've ever studied the Bible. Okay, and I have a number of reasons I've said over the last few weeks, but let me give you one today. Most people think the book of Revelation is a hard book to read. This is how the book of Revelation opens. The revelation of Jesus Christ. The apocalypsis of Jesus Christ. The unveiling of Jesus Christ. The making plain of Jesus Christ. By the way, it's not the Revelations. There is no such thing as the book of Revelations. It's made up out of thin air. It's the single revelation of Yeshua. The revelation of Jesus Christ. That book plainly says, this is a book that is unveiled, and the point of the book is that people should understand this. I am of the belief that the book of Revelation is hard to read if you say it's got to fit this theology. It's got to fit pre-trib. It's got to fit mid-trib. It's got to fit pre-wrath. It's got to fit post-trib. If reading the Bible does not seriously challenge whatever it is you think you believe, you're not reading it very deeply. It's a very easy book to read if you just read it and what does it say? And it opens by saying, this is an easy book to read. How does the book of Daniel end? Daniel chapter 12, verse 9. It's not in your notes, but you could look at it. It says, the words of this prophecy are to be sealed until the last days. God says, just make the point. God himself says, if you think you understand this book before the last days, you are so wrong. You don't have a clue how wrong you are. Now, we are in the last days. We really are in the last days. And there's all kinds of reasons for believing that we're in the last days. So there is an unveiling of the book. But let me just say this. There's no other book of the Bible that says this is an easy book to read. And there's no other book of the Bible that says this is a hard book to read. If you want to learn the Bible like no other possibility, study the book of Daniel. There's your chance. And that's what we're doing. So I love this book. Okay, so we are, if you're using the handout I always add a little bit. If you're using last week's handout, it's on the bottom of page 11. If you're using the handout that's out there on the table, if you need a handout, does anybody need a handout? If you raise your hand, someone can bring this. Over here, Tethe needs one because she was busy setting up. Anybody who needs a handout, if you could just raise your hand, and Melody will bring it to you. So if you're getting the new handout, we're on the bottom of page 12. And we're going to pick it up with the calling of the wise guys, the not-so-wise guys. Okay, here we go. So, in fact, you know what I really want to do? I know we did this, but I want to read just because. I'm going to just read to you. Here we go. I'm going to get there in a second. So Daniel chapter 1 is, I'm not going to read the whole chapter. In fact, I'm not going to read it all. It's 21 verses, but I'm going to read the whole chapter 2, and then we'll start by going through, okay? So Daniel chapter 2. Now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell them his dreams. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I have had a dream. and my spirit is anxious to know the dream." Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. "O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation." And the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, "My decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made into a hash heap. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation." They answered again and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation." The king answered and said, "I know for certain that you would gain time because you see that my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me, there is only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time is changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation." The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There's not a man on the earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It's a difficult thing that the king requests, and there's no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh." For this reason, the king was angry and very furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then, with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, "Why is the decree from the king so urgent?" Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him the time that he might tell the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his, and he changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand." Therefore, Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation." Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, "I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king the interpretation." And the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, "Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation?" Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, "The secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O king, thoughts came into your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this. And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, the secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living. But for our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king, that you may know the thoughts of your heart. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on the feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron and the clay, the bronze and the silver and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away, so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the air, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold, but after you shall arise another kingdom, inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountains without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. The king answered Daniel and said, Truly, your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, a revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts. And he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, a chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Also Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. What a great chapter. This is the chapter where we find that Daniel then, by the end of the chapter, gets promoted to be the head over the wise men. And 500 years later, he's the head of the school of the wise men, the school of prophecy. 500 years later, the children of that school, the wise men, will come looking for Jesus, the baby. This is a really significant chapter. This chapter is really we'll spend at least 3 weeks on it. We won't be doing this next week because we'll have a guest you'll really like next week, but we'll spend at least 3 weeks, and we already had a week, so at least 4 weeks in this chapter because there's so much to it. The command on page 12 of the notes, 11 if you have last week's, at the bottom of the page. The command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, the Chaldeans. Notice that Daniel and his friends are not among those who are called, which is kind of interesting. Why were they not called? Two possible reasons. One is the young Jewish lads lack any experience. They have a lot of knowledge, but they haven't done anything. And secondly, okay, they were only tested for knowledge. So they have got no experience and no credentials. They don't get called. On the top of page 13. The Chaldeans spoke to the king. Okay, so now you might notice in verse 2 it will mention the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans. Well, the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers don't speak. The Chaldeans speak up. Okay, and why would they speak up? Because Nebuchadnezzar is a Chaldean. So not all Babylonians are Chaldeans, but this is his close compatriots, as it were. And by the way, I did say this last time, and I'm solidly here. When you see the word Chaldeans in the Bible in your own reading, you could just think essentially it's a synonym for the Babylonians, but it's actually a sect within Babylon, just so you understand that. So this is his people, his special clan, as it were. They speak up, his fellow nationals. And they begin with this, live forever. And so there's two ways to read that. One is they're basically demonstrating their loyalty. King, live forever. We're one of your people. And the other is they and the king seems to feel like they're trying to manipulate him. And then it says, to the king in Aramaic. Now that is actually, it's kind of a significant phrase, and it could be as simple as this. Right after the word Aramaic, the rest of the book through the end of chapter 7 is all in Aramaic, not Hebrew. And so it could literally be the writer's way of saying, here we go, here comes the Aramaic, okay? And then a couple paragraphs down, I put, why did the text turn from Hebrew to Aramaic? Well, there are a lot of Bible scholars of our kind of thinking who will say the reason for this is because the dream is about the age of the Gentiles. So it has left Hebrew, and it has now gone into Aramaic. And what has happened is, from the time of the exile to the last days of the tribulation, that's the time of the Gentiles. Okay, obviously, the world is in that and nearing the end of that, because Israel was formed as a nation in 1948. So God broadened his focus from just Israel to include the kingdoms of this world. Now, Daniel 9, and I taught on this, I don't know, I think it was July of last year in the Shabbat service. And so this is that's the passage that really talks about the age of the Gentiles right there, or that kind of opens it up for us. You might notice in Daniel 9, and we'll actually go over it again in probably 6 months, but in Daniel 9, okay, it says there shall be in the middle, towards the bottom, the fifth line of Daniel 9:25, it says, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So that's 69 weeks. And we have good reason to believe, because we can look back on history and see how it actually all worked out. 69 weeks, if a week is 7 years, 69 times 7 is 483 years. It actually works out to, from the day that in Nehemiah, Artaxerxes becomes king, from the day that he issues the order to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the day that all these prophecies are fulfilled. It actually works out to falls right on April 6th in the year 32 AD. So Daniel seems to predict the day of Palm Sunday. That's a Sunday, April 6th in the year 32 AD. That's just like unbelievable. So that's 69 of the 70 weeks. It leaves a 7-week period. It leaves a 7-year period. Does that make sense? That 7-year period is very significant. Jacob will call that the time, or Jeremiah will call that the time of Jacob's trouble. We understand those who study eschatology will refer to that as the 7-year tribulation period. That's the period after the age of the Gentiles is over, when the Lord turns back to Israel to complete his covenant with Israel. Does this make sense? I was thinking about, let me put some things in context for you, because at the end of that age, God is going to turn back to Israel. God made some promises to Abraham. I will bless those who bless you, and him who curses you I will curse. And in you all the nations of the earth will be blessed. He's judged individuals. He judged Persia as a nation. He judged Egypt as a nation. He judged Rome as a nation. He's judged nations, but he's never judged the whole world. That has never happened. But he said in Genesis 12:3, I will bless those, plural, who bless you, and him, singular, who curses you, I will curse. And in you, all the nations of the earth. The fact that he will be blessed. So he goes from plural to singular to all, showing that when he says all, he really means all. And if God does not have a time when he judges all the nations, he will not have fulfilled his promise to Abraham in Genesis 12. So that day will come. He will judge all the nations of the earth. And in Matthew 25, there are three parables. This first is the parable of the bridegroom and the bride, the virgins. Then there's the second parable of the talents. In the parable of the talents, the Lord returns to the earth and he judges individuals based on what they do with the talents that he gave them. And then there's the parable of the sheep and goat nations. Matthew 25, the third of the three parables. And when the Lord returns to the earth, he will judge every nation, not just people. Nations will be judged. Whole nations. And as you did it unto the least of these my brethren, which is Israel, I will do to you. He will be like Joseph, returning and coming to the rescue of Israel, which is why the two ancient names for Messiah, one the church is very familiar with, Ben David, the son of David, and the other, Ben Yosef, the son of Joseph. So the first time he came as a suffering Savior, and they wanted a conquering Savior like David. And the next time he comes as a conquering Savior, and like Joseph, to the rescue of his people. And the day is going to come. I thought, how much do I do on this? The book of Revelation, you cannot understand the book of Revelation if you do not read it through the lens of Daniel. You're making it up completely, just totally making it up. There's nothing about the book of Revelation that will suggest that there's a 7-year period. You'll think it's 3.5 years. Daniel 9 is where you realize there's a 3.5-year period and a 3.5-year period. Together, they're 7 years. This is the key to understanding all eschatology. And so, and I'm not talking pre, mid, post. That's nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that 7-year period. That is going to happen. And when we come to that 7-year period, this is really, it opens in the book of Revelation. I didn't put this in the notes, but as I was looking at this earlier today, I said, I think I'll say it. Revelation chapter 6 has the 6 of the seals, 6 of the 7 seal judgments. The Lord opens the seals. You remember this? And the first seal is the white horse, right? It's the Antichrist. He goes out with a bow to conquer, but it has no arrows. So he's like the Antichrist, conquers by peace at the beginning. The second horse is a red horse. Okay, and it's a war. It says it's a great sword. The third horse is a black horse. It's famine. It says it's famine. Okay, a quart of wheat for a day's wages. Basically enough bread for one person to eat will take a whole day's work. That's the third horse of the tribulation period. The fourth horse, in Revelation chapter 6, verses 7 through about 9 or so, it's a pale green horse. The word for pale green is the Greek word chloros. It's actually the word, like we get our word chlorine from it. It's the color of your grass. If you leave a basket over it, it turns out light green. That's the fourth horse. And this Revelation 6 says it kills people by the sword, by hunger, by famine, and by death, and a quarter of the planet dies. Revelation 6, the fourth seal. And notice, because it kills people by 4 things. It kills people by the sword. Well, that's the red horse also. And it kills people by famine. That's also the second horse. the black horse. So the fourth horse is almost indistinguishable from the first three. Can you see that? It's like four horses rushing out of a gate. They're almost indistinguishable. That's the four horses of the apocalypse. The first of the seven seals, four of them are horses, like the four horses of the apocalypse, and they're like almost simultaneous. Is the point? It's helpful. This is like if you've never heard me explain it, it's like mind-boggling. The fourth seal, the fourth judgment, the fourth horse kills a quarter of the planet. So in one judgment, not all of the judgments of Revelation, just one quarter of the planet will die. I looked up today what the population of the world is today, 8.1 billion. Mathematically, more than 2 billion people will die from that one judgment in the book of Revelation. Now, the reason why I think this is so like, wow, kind of like, whoo, what is God doing in the end times? He has made a promise, some promises to Israel. And Hamas is in trouble. They just are. Because at some point in time, the Lord is going to say, okay, I have made some promises to Israel. And I am going to come back, and I'm going to fulfill my promises to Israel. And he's going to do it. And that day will come. That is the coming of the victor, the Messiah, the warrior. Yeah. And he comes with a sword in his mouth and blood on his, as he tramples, Isaiah 53, treads the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God Almighty. The point in time right now, and for the last 2,000 years, Israel has suffered. But there will come a day, this is the hope of the Messiah, there will come a day when Messiah will return for Israel to her rescue. And that's Yeshua. He comes to Israel. He does not land in South Lake. He does not land in Brooklyn. He does not land in Rome. He lands in Jerusalem. And he takes up David's throne in Jerusalem. And the Lord himself, at that point, will say, everything is out of the way. I am now finally going to fulfill all my promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's going to happen. And he will. He just will. So this section is now turning into Aramaic because it's going into now the age of the Gentiles. We're going to the top of page 14. No way we're going to get through this handout today. No way at all. Okay. Page 14, Daniel 2, 5 through 7. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, here's the rub. I'm not going to tell you the dream. And that's why I call it the Golden Challenge. And the question is, does Nebuchadnezzar remember the dream or not? Or is he just kind of testing the wise guys is the question here. And there's disagreement over this topic. Tyndale commentary, Christian commentary, a core Christian commentary of our kind of thinking says there is every likelihood that Nebuchadnezzar had forgotten the details of the dream that had been haunting him. Over the ages, Jewish commentators debate it. Some suggest that he may have remembered enough of it just to know if the not-so-wise guys were actually trying to fool the king. So, you know, we've all been through, if you've been through a Gateway Presbyter service, and the prophetic words that are done are just flat-out remarkable. Those prophetic speakers, they have no clue who they're talking to. You've seen prophetic words in here when we do Presbyter here. They don't know who they're talking to. Sometimes they do, and if they do, they'll say, I have to get a little self-disclosure. I know this person. Because some of these prophetic words, they don't know who they're talking to. It's like, it really elevates the quality of that prophetic word when they don't know you, doesn't it? So, The King James Version, the old King James Version of Daniel 2:5 says this: "The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill." The old King James Version translates verse 5 significantly different from all the other translations. The problem is that there's a word in verse 5 that only appears here and then also in verse 8, and translators have to guess at what this Aramaic word means. And actually, if you think about it now, we're talking about a text, the book of Daniel, written 2,600 years ago. So what does this word mean? And that's what's driving this. But all the translations do it more like the New King James and not like the Old King James. So the Old King James is 1611 version. That's the oldest. But what we call the Old King James is the 1769 version. The oldest is 1611. You've probably never seen a 1611 King James Bible. I have one at home. So I typed it here for you. The Old King James, 1611. "For God so loved ye world." You see that? It's like, what is this? Like, okay, so that's just 413 years ago. Book of Daniel's 2,600 years ago. You can have a word where people go, what does that word mean? That's not hard to imagine, right? That's the picture. For your information, I think this is kind of funny. There are 5 different, I have a real problem with the King James only folk. They major on ignorance. They are amazingly good at that. It's just absurd. It's just no way to defend it with a scholarly foundation. I'm not in any way putting down on the Old King James. Not at all. It's a great translation. But King James only, that's just absurd. Okay? So, and I could do a whole lesson on just that topic right there. There are 5 different versions of the King James Bible. The 1611 is the original. Then there was a 1629. Then there was a 1638. Then there was a 1762. Then there's what you call the old King James, which is actually the 1769, which actually makes it the 5th Old King James Bible. What you call the New King James is the 6th. But actually, there was another one. So the new one is 1982, the New King James, the 6th. But I'm going to the top of page 15, and you got to read this along with me because I may not say it all. There was supposed to be another edition in the year 1661. It is known as the Wicked Bible. When Charles I was king of England in the 1600s. The Wicked Bible is also known as the Adulterer's Bible or the Sinner's Bible. This is true history, friend. The 2 most significant errors in the Wicked Bible are, number 1, the word not is missing from the 8th commandment. It says, thou shalt commit adultery. And the second great glaring misprint is in Deuteronomy 5:24. And ye said, behold, the Lord our God has showed us his glory and his greatness. And we have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. And we have seen this day that God doth talk with man, and he liveth. But in the 1649 version, it does not say greatness. This is true history. By the way, at the time, the English word just had the meaning of a donkey. That doesn't really make it a whole lot better, though, does it? True history. 1 year after its publication, the people who were responsible were fined £300, equivalent to £53,000 in 2021, equivalent to $67,000 in U.S. dollars. I heard somebody say once and they lost their ability to print as well. But I heard somebody say once that actually that was in those days a lifetime's salary. So it was a serious error. Okay. There is some debate over how the Aramaic of Daniel chapter 2, verse 5 should be translated. And Could be this is what I have firmly decided, or could be the thing has gone from me. The king probably has some kind of memory, something. He knows that he had a dream. If he'd completely forgotten the dream, the wise guys probably would have been able to figure it out that he doesn't remember it all. They would have made something up. So there's probably something going on there. Okay, although the king must have had some recollection of the dream, he keeps his counselors in suspense by not telling them what he remembers. And the king's probably testing them. Why would we think that he's testing them? Because it's only the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. And so these wise guys have been around for years. They're his father's wise guys. And they're probably really good at hoodwinking the leader. And Nebuchadnezzar's probably thinking, I want to test these guys. You know? And there are some scholars who think he actually wants to get rid of them anyway. So that's his intention. This whole thing about not listening to the older guys is kind of reminiscent of what happens with Rehoboam when he doesn't listen to Solomon's advisors, and he loses the kingdom. And Nebuchadnezzar's, he's given him a chance. I'm on page 16, the B there. The king may simply be testing them, wondering, do these guys really have any real value? If they can't come through, I kill them. I don't lose anything. If they do come through, hey, I really got something here. That's what he's thinking. So he threatens to punish them. He says, I'm going to have you cut in pieces, literally made into limbs, made into bits. I'm going to have your houses turned into a hash heap, a garbage dump, piles of rubble. The old King James, as you saw, uses the word dunghill. An outhouse. That's what's going to happen here. I'm going over to page 17. Okay, he says, I'm going to give you gifts if you do this. Well, gifts, whatever the king gives them is a gift because it's their job to do this. So it's not like they're getting a paid. No, they're already paid. This is their job. Instead, I'm going to give you gifts if you do this. In verses 8 through 11, I don't hear people out there yet, so I'm keeping to go. Okay, so he says, Rashi says the sages are being sentenced not for their inability to tell Nebuchadnezzar what the dream was. They would have been okay if they had simply said, we can't do it. But according to Rashi, the king's really mad because they made him repeat the request. And they repeated the demand that he's tell them. And it's that repetition. And that's why he says, you're making me repeat what I said? Well, there's only going to be one decree for you. And I'm not going to repeat this. It doesn't matter if you desist from telling the dream. It doesn't matter if you give me a false version. I'm not repeating. We're not repeating anything. Your one decree is you're toast. That's what he says. I might get this done. On page 18, they say there's not a man on earth, no other who could tell the king except the gods. That's an interesting, the gods. Okay, so there are some who translate that as the angels. The Babylonians, they believed that there were two categories of angels. There were the angels who dwell with people, and there were the angels that did not dwell with people. They were just up there. And so that thinking says that really what they're saying is the angels that have the answer you want, they're not with people, they're up there. So we can't get that for you. Okay? Of interest, when I read that, I thought to myself, well, this is very similar to the fact that Judaism believes, not believed, Orthodox Judaism believes that there are 10 categories of angels. Okay? Which is very similar if you studied the whole idea of Gnosticism. Some of you may have heard of that, and the different levels, because the base level of Gnosticism, everything's material, and in Gnosticism, everything that's material is evil. And God is completely immaterial, and therefore he's pure. And then there's these 10 emanations, I think it's 10, it might be 7, emanations that go from here, there, and so that's Gnosticism. And actually Gnosticism is the first Christian cult. You remember the Simon of Acts chapter 8? Tradition is that he was the founder of Gnosticism. Anyway, that's an interesting thing to study. Okay, so the wise guys on page 19, Display humility, admitting that they are merely men, people, and that these powers are limited to gods. And the king is thinking, well, isn't that why I have magicians? To get the information from the gods? So what good are you? That's what he's thinking, right? And so this is not a battle between Daniel's God and the gods of the Babylonians. The God of Israel is not mentioned in this first part. It's mentioned later when Daniel, when he gives the answer. It's not mentioned at the beginning here. The gods of the Babylonians have not been mentioned in the book except for the names of the 4 names that are given to the 4 Jewish boys. The battle is really between Babylon's worldly wisdom and Daniel's supernatural wisdom. That's the battle. And by the way, you remember last week I talked about the world, the whole idea of worldliness and wokeness and all of that? Just to kind of drive it home, without exception, everything that has anything to do with wokeness in any way, shape, or form, no matter how you address it, all goes back to Babylon. All of it. All of the idea of humanity having this special power and this special whatever. Let us build a tower to the heavens and make a name for ourselves in heaven. Everything about that. There is not a human being in the last 1,000 years who has had to deal with the challenge of wokeness like Daniel did. Not one. He's at the birthplace of it. And his 3 friends are at the birthplace of it. I think that people, and yet he has the ability to study and to show himself wiser than all of these magi in their own stuff. All 4 of these guys. We need to think about how we respond to the world that we're in. We don't need to live in that kind of seclusion, which really comes out of fear. We don't need to live there. The curse without a cause shall not come, Proverbs says. We do not need to live there. Daniel did not live there. And in fact, when Daniel thought I think I go there with this. I don't have the time to go through all of this. I'll just close with this thought. We'll pick it up right here. This protocol to go into the king's presence, Daniel doesn't even follow the protocol. He follows the protocol when he has the answer. But he does not follow the protocol when he goes to the king the first time. He walks straight in. That's kind of interesting. So this idea, we do not I think our world is just so polarized over here and over there and over there and over there. But what did Daniel do? There's probably no better example on how to deal with the world and the mess that we live with than Daniel. Okay? And the scripture talks about the wisdom of Daniel. So here we are. We're on page 19. We're going to pick it up in 2 weeks, right there with the angry autocrat. And I trust you'll be blessed.